Canada is absolutely furious at Donald Trump and his despicable regime, and they are not holding back as the United States is trying to threaten Canada heading into these CUSMA negotiations, the Canadian-United States-Mexico agreement.
So MeidasTouch just highlighted a Canadian MP's brutal takedown of Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, and it's absolutely devastating. We're seeing unprecedented diplomatic warfare as Trump tries to extort our closest ally before USMCA renegotiations even begin. This exposes everything wrong with gangster diplomacy.
The United States is trying to extort Canada that if you even want to have the privilege of negotiating with us, you need to pay to play and make all of these concessions for us to even consider a renewal of CUSMA. Otherwise, we are going to try to harm your country and inflict more economic pain. That's the Trump regime's posture as it relates to Canada.
USMCA replaced NAFTA in 2020. And it's not supposed to be renegotiated until 2026. But Trump's demanding upfront concessions just to sit at the table. That's not negotiation, that's extortion. No administration has ever demanded allies pay tribute before trade talks.
We've had demonstrated to you already that when we are ready to fight back, we're going to win this. Look at the Canadian boycott against United States products, services, and tourism into the United States. Canada is ready to fight. This has the Trump regime running scared.
This breaks 250 years of U.S.-Canada diplomatic norms. Even during the War of 1812, we negotiated in good faith afterward. Demanding concessions before talks is literally mob tactics. Nice country you got there. Shame if something happened to it.
You know, Howard Lutnick is like, oh, Canada sucks, man. Canada sucks. Like, why are they even doing this? To which Senator Shaheen from New Hampshire is like, because you're threatening its sovereignty, because you keep on mocking it, because you impose unlawful tariffs against it, because you constantly launch these phony pretextual investigations against Canada trade in order to justify your atrocities.
That Canadian boycott cost New Hampshire alone $300 million in tourism revenue in 2025. Jim Beam's Kentucky distillery laid off 800 workers. This isn't government imposed, it's organic grassroots fury. When your own citizens boycott you, you've lost the moral high ground completely.
What Donald Trump has created in Iran is more than just a global dumpster fire. The cascade effects of the chaos that he's created will cause serious damage to the world economy.
Senator Shaheen represents New Hampshire, where Canadian tourists spend $1.2 billion annually. She's watching Trump's mouth destroy her state's economy. The phony trade investigations reference is spot on. Trump weaponizes bureaucracy to justify predetermined tariffs on allies.
We're already seeing fuel shortages in Europe, shortages across Asia. What also needs to be looked at is the crisis that's coming in food, because a good percentage of the world's fertilizer comes through the strait. And it will affect countries like Sri Lanka, Sudan, Central Africa, across Asia, that will cause massive increases in food prices, which will have a massive impact on the economy and, of course, the danger of starvation.
The Iran crisis has oil at $95 per barrel and fertilizer prices up 40%. This is exactly when you need stable allies, not trade wars. Trump's alienating Canada while global supply chains are already fragile. It's economic suicide during a crisis.
Bombast, ignorant attitudes, threat. Howard Lutnick's calling us losers. Yeah, we're losers when we have trade between Canada and the United States worth $1 trillion, and that the United States trades 3 times the amount to Canada than they do to China.
20% of global fertilizer transits the Strait of Hormuz. Food prices in developing nations have spiked 25% since January. Starting a trade war with your agricultural partner during a global food crisis is criminally negligent. People will literally starve.
Donald Trump says we are the nastiest people he's ever dealt with. They insult us, they ridicule us, they act like our border doesn't exist because we haven't been.
Exactly right. This is protection racket economics. International trade law prohibits demanding tribute before negotiations. The WTO has clear rules against this, but Trump treats allies like mafia territory. It's unprecedented in modern diplomatic history.
This is gangster economics. We're not surprised. We've been saying this on Midas Canada from day one. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a gangster regime. They want us to pay them in order to negotiate a trade agreement. So
Canada's digital services tax would have made tech giants pay 3% on Canadian revenue, perfectly legal under international law. Trudeau suspended it as a goodwill gesture, giving up sovereignty to appease Trump. The reward? More insults and demands.
at the same time, we're learning there's a massive offshore political psyops operation trying to undermine and break Canada, that millions and millions of online views from sites claiming to be pro-Alberta separatists are being pumped into Canada.
Alberta separatist content has exploded 400% since 2024, mostly from US IP addresses. It's identical to Brexit disinformation, amplifying regional grievances to fracture allied nations. Putin perfected this playbook. Trump adopted it against democracies worldwide.
This is the Brexit playbook. This is the standard, the Russian operations. This is the United States. This is offshore undermining of Canada, because what the United States is going to do under Donald Trump is they are going to back their Donbass-style separatist leader in Daniel Smith to try and break our country apart.
General Isaac Brock defeated American invasion attempts in 1812 at Queenston Heights. Invoking him before trade talks sends a clear message. Canada has defended itself against American aggression before and will again. That's not diplomatic language. That's a warning.
To invoke a general who defended Canada against a military threat from the United States on the eve of trade negotiations, I think is pretty provocative. But this is a message that Mark Carney was delivering to Canadians to say, be ready. And he did say that. He said, we've been through tough times before. We will get through this.
Trump's playbook requires submission from targets. When allies refuse to break, he escalates. More insults, more threats, more chaos. Canada's resistance threatens the entire intimidation model. If allies don't fold, the whole strategy collapses.
You know, when Donald Trump is saying he arbitrarily just wants to move our border 50 kilometers, yeah, you know, take Niagara Falls, take Surrey, take Sherbrooke, take the Great Lakes, take Toronto, take Hamilton, whatever. This is the attitude of a gangster regime. What really makes them angry, why they shout and call us losers and why they insult us, is because we haven't broke, and we are not going to break, and Canada will never break.
That lunch money analogy is perfect. Playground bullying scaled to international relations. Canadian families wake up seeing their country mocked by supposed allies. It's personal now, which makes the boycott impossible to stop through government channels.
Howard Lutnick, you suck. No, seriously, you really suck. I feel the need to bring this message to you on behalf of the people of Canada who work hard, who play fair, who do their part to build a good society.
This three-part destruction is methodical. Incompetent negotiator, morally compromised person, terrible American representative. The Epstein revelations are coming, and they're going to demolish whatever credibility Lutnick thinks he has left.
And they wake up in the morning and they see you on TV insulting our nation and pushing us around and thinking we're like these scrawny kids who are going to give you our lunch money. No, it ain't going to happen. So if that was your strategy, it sucks.
Canada buys $429 billion in U.S. goods annually. China buys $151 billion. Canada is literally our biggest customer, not China. Lutnick's insulting our most profitable relationship while obsessing over our least reliable one. It's economically insane.
As a trade negotiator, you suck big time. As a human being, you really suck. And we're going to talk about that. I know it's not comfortable talk for you, but we got to go through there. And then we're going to talk about you as a guy who's supposed to represent the best interests of the American people. On that, you super suck.
Brilliant point. Public insults make compromise political suicide for Canadian leaders. Behind-the-scenes pressure might work, but televised humiliation forces them to stand firm. Trump turned private negotiation into public theater, destroying his own leverage.
So we are on the verge of renegotiating CUSMA, the North American Free Trade Deal, the biggest trade agreement basically in the world that creates $1 trillion in reciprocal trade between the United States and Canada every single year. That you sell 3 times more products into Canada than you do from China, and that we are a bigger exporter into the United States than China. And yet you say that we suck.
The Epstein timeline matters because Lutnick's story keeps changing. First, he barely knew him. Then he was creeped out. Now, photos surface from Epstein Island. Each revision destroys credibility. If he lies about this, what else is false?
Now, as a human being, tell us about that photo of Epstein Island, because, I've been reading about your claims about knowing Epstein, and it just doesn't make sense. So in 2005, you find out Epstein's your next door neighbor. So fair enough, you and your wife go over to visit your neighbor. Perfectly normal, I'd say, I guess, for people who live next door to millionaires like Epstein. And you said that when you got the tour, you were incredibly creeped out because he was making these creepy sexual innuendos. And you said, and in the 6 to 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided I would never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
This connects to current events. Trump's considering pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, while his Commerce Secretary has unexplained Epstein connections. The 2005 timeline is crucial because it shows Lutnick knew exactly who Epstein was before visiting the island.
And then the Epstein files dropped and we saw your picture at Epstein Island. So then you had to admit, oh, right. Yeah, in 2012, you called him up and went to hang out with him on the island. And you said, quote, my wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. And I had another couple that were there as well with their children.
7 years between those visits. Lutnick claimed Epstein was so disgusting he'd never see him again, then brought his 4 children to visit him on a private island. Either he lied about being disgusted or he endangered his kids.
Why would you bring your children, dude, to be in the presence of a man that you thought was so disgusting you would never be in the same room with him again, and yet you showed up at his island and brought your kids? Yeah.
There's no good answer here. If Epstein was truly disgusting, bringing children was criminal negligence. If he wasn't disgusting, then Lutnick lied about his reaction. Either way, it disqualifies him from representing American families' interests internationally.
The American people who were being hammered from the Canadian boycott, not our government boycott, but the ordinary Canadians who refused to spend $1 in the United States because of the constant threats and insults. The traffic to tourist destinations is down 35%. It's cost billions of dollars. It shut the Jim Beam distillery down.
The human cost is devastating. Jim Beam distillery workers lost jobs because Canadians stopped buying bourbon. Tourism workers across border states are unemployed. Lutnick's insults have real consequences for American families trying to pay rent and buy groceries.
In my home state of New Hampshire, tourism is the second largest industry, both by revenue, and it supports 70,000 jobs. Canada has long been our largest share of foreign visitors, but last year we saw a 30% drop in Canadian tourism, largely due to the loss of trust and goodwill because of this administration's rhetoric around Canada.
70,000 New Hampshire jobs depend on tourism. Canada was their biggest foreign visitor source until Trump's rhetoric destroyed that relationship. Senator Shaheen represents workers whose livelihoods Lutnick is destroying with his incompetence and arrogance.
Secretary Lutnick, last week you said about Canada's economic strategy, and I quote, "They suck." I believe your spokesperson then said this was about Canada's economy leeching off of the U.S. How does insulting our closest ally and neighbor help the businesses in my state of New Hampshire and states all across this country who are hurting because of the loss of Canadian business and tourism?
This gets to the heart of Lutnick's failure. His job is promoting American commerce, not destroying it. Every Canadian tourist who cancels their trip costs American jobs. Every business relationship he poisons hurts American workers and families.
We have all those Canadian visitors who are not coming because of your comments and comments by the administration. How does that help our economy?
The causal chain is undeniable. Lutnick insults Canada, Canadians stop visiting America, American workers lose jobs. He's literally causing the economic damage he's supposed to prevent. It's governmental malpractice on a massive scale.
Wow, man, you are so arrogant. You are so out of touch. You really don't give a damn about the damage that you're doing. Fair play. Come to the negotiating table. Canadians are ready. They are so done with your attitude. They are so done with your arrogance. And they are so done with being nice. Because you know what, Howard Lutnick? You suck.
This diplomatic breakdown will outlast Trump's presidency. Lutnick's arrogance has poisoned a century-long partnership that supported millions of jobs on both sides. Rebuilding trust with America's most important ally will take decades of careful diplomacy.